Hi everyone, thank you for pressing play on this video. I'm sat next to the, I call you like, lovely Dom, who is going to be talking to us today about bipolar disorder. I'll let him introduce himself a bit more formally in a second, but what I would say is hopefully you find the video interesting and it enlightens you about bipolar, what you can do if you encounter somebody with it, maybe a young person, or maybe you questioning your own limits and your capability of what you're able to do because of your abilities and stuff like that. Hopefully today we'll dispel some myths.
Yeah, sure.
And take it from there.
Brilliant. Hi everyone. So I have bipolar. I have bipolar type 1. There are 7 different types of bipolar, but normally you kind of stick to the top 4. The first one is bipolar type 1. And again, this is all like everything is only relative as to what kind of bipolar you have. And just because you have one type, it doesn't mean that you can't skip into the other type or have sessions of different types of mania. But for the most part, I have bipolar type 1. So I have nice peaceful time, like now where I'm, neurotypical and everything is as it should be. My thought process is right, my speech is right, although I am speaking fast, but that's because I'm Irish, not manic. So everything is as it is. And then I'll have maybe kind of 48 to 72 hours where speech gets faster, thoughts get quicker, energies go up, the need to exercise gets, really strong, and I need to do loads and I like really quick ideas, nothing's thought out, so if something comes into my head it just has to be done there. I remember 4 o'clock in the morning once in my dressing gown in December when it was snowing, gardening because I felt really sorry for the flowers because they were so cold.
Yeah.
So I'm like, have my hairdryer plugged into the bathroom window and I'm hanging it out and I'm like drying the ice, because that's very logical when you're manic. But yeah, it's you've got to kind of have a bit of fun with it, because if you don't, you can get really bogged down. But it is really serious. I've spent time being sectioned, like having like 6 months of pure mania, suicidal ideation, no capacity for remembering anything, and that's one of the massive things that I really struggle with, is I don't remember. So when I have my last manic episode was 12 days, and I remember little tiny snippets, but they're out of time and they're not in focus, and I'm not sure if they happened or are they a dream or so that's like the most frustrating thing about bipolar. But
can we rewind a little bit?
Yeah.
So when you were like little Dom, were your episodes as bad then? Did they?
Massively. Like there is absolutely no doubt whatsoever. I've been bipolar since the day dot.
Yeah.
Like I grew up in a tiny little village in rural Ireland. I remember my, sex ed being done by a nun and a priest, and just basically told you not to touch yourself, you go to hell.
Yeah.
So it was that kind of an environment. My mum used to be a nun, and so there was a real sense of Catholicism in our upbringing, and I was just really misunderstood. Again, that was indicative of the time. We didn't know bipolar was a thing, but not really. It was a thing you saw in films in America. It wasn't something that happened in Ireland, So I wasn't actually diagnosed until I was 24. Prior to that, like I was on antidepressants, I was on some mood stabilizers, but leading up to like a really serious episode I had in Ireland, like when I was, I think it was about 24, 25, the GP was giving me antidepressants, and of course the very nature of an antidepressant, SSRI, is that it pushes your mood up and makes you happy. And then the psychiatrist was putting me on quetiapine, which is a mood stabilizer. So my mood's being pushed up by one tablet and then stabilized, and then pushed up and stabilized. So actually what was happening was I was being completely mismanaged, and I was chemically induced into a manic episode, which lasted a really long time.
Was this around sort of
24, and it kind of it sat in with quite a difficult time in my life. I'd broken up with an ex-partner, and because of my mania and my bipolar, I lost my company and I lost my business, and then I was sectioned, and I ended up going to Argentina for 6 months to a care facility over there. I'm really close to my older brother, and he lives there with his wife and 2 children. So I went.
It wasn't just
there.
a random pun.
No, it wasn't. It's like, where can we stick him? Where he's going to be least trouble for us?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't like that at all. No, thankfully, like I'm just so lucky with my family, especially Ed. Like he's just, he's amazing. Like he spent like $30,000 on this private place for me to get better, and was there every day. And because it was private, I was really paranoid that they were keeping me sick because they wanted the money.
Yeah.
So then I just stopped eating. And he was on one side of Buenos Aires, I was on the other, and he was like getting a taxi every day for lunch and dinner to bring food over that I would eat from him. And it's been quite a journey.
So I guess that really shows, doesn't it? Particularly if we relate this back to now being a foster carer.
Yeah.
Is how important that a correct diagnosis or things, because that sort of like you said, like, well, it's not a thing. Like being gay, having bipolar, being depressed, that's just not a thing. And actually it shows that actually then what happens is it builds up.
Yeah.
So actually for our young people that we care for, I guess now you more than anybody would understand how important it is that you get stuff right as soon as possible, really.
And I think it's really important as well to remember, like, we're in this kind of age at the moment where, sexual orientations are really diverse, and people are, for the most part, the majority, especially in the United Kingdom, people are very open and accepting. I'm going to go out on a limb here, maybe, but in my experience, the same can't be said for bipolar. Mm-hmm. So, if you fill out a form for a job application, you put down depression, everyone just reads on, fine. Like everyone's got depression nowadays, and so many people take antidepressants, and it's just seen as very acceptable. Yeah. But you write bipolar, they know that means manic episodes, they know that means they could be once a month, they could be once a week, they could be once every 6 months, you're getting 4 or 5 days off. Yeah. And because you've written it down, there's nothing they can do about that. So I know I was offered a job probably about 8 or 9 months ago to manage a care home for young people, so a foster home for young people, and it was all done and everything, and then I emailed in the questionnaire, the health questionnaire, and then all of a sudden the job was taken away. So it is happening, and it happens every day, and it is really hard for employers. Like, I get it, I understand, like, I know for myself how difficult it's been in the past, where I've dropped people in it at the drop of a hat, and it's not like, I've fallen over or I've got a cold. Like, it's 12 days, and it's normally you're not fit to go back to work for kind of 18 days, because you can't drive when you need to be really careful about like driving when you're manic, because you're not in your right mind, and you're not safe to drive. So like, I get how difficult it is, but actually I think what a lot of people are missing is the value of bipolar. Like, I would never give up my bipolar. Like, my caring, compassionate side, like what makes me a really good foster carer really sits in with my mental health, and I've got a really diverse understanding of mental health, and especially we've got 2 pretty vulnerable young people living with us now, and I don't think we would have ever done as well as we've done if it wasn't for like my mania and my bipolar. And we've been really lucky. Like, we've had a fantastic support. I've only had a manic episode actually once in 2 years, which is unheard of, really. And Blue Sky were amazing. Stood in, said to Jack, listen, you know what you're doing. If you need us, we're here. We're stepping back. Yeah. You don't be afraid. And then our youngest boy went to go and stay with his granddad for a couple of days while I got better. And everyone just like swooped in, did what they needed to do, and swooped out again. It was like,
not staying around unnecessarily.
And
absolutely. Not doing things for the sake of it.
Yeah, and that makes like the hardest thing you'll ever have to do as somebody who suffers with bipolar is accept the fact that you are not responsible for what happens when you're manic. And that's something that I have, only very recently really come to understand, because, everyone wants to talk about your mania when you're well. They're like, oh my God, and then this happened, and then this happened, and oh Jesus, then you said this, and then we found you here, and you're thinking, oh God, I can't believe this is happening. And you kind of, you hold this resentment to yourself, and this frustration, and this irritability that, I can't believe I put my friends through this, my family, my husband, my kids, there's all of this shame and stigma, and actually, like, it's just, people say, what stays in sober comes out drunk. Like, that's not this. Like, the things that I say, my whole thought process is different. the words I use, the phrasing I use is completely different. The energy, the toxicity of it, like who I am is dispelled completely, and I become this other individual. And I know some people might think, God, that's really cold, like that you just say, well, not my monkey, not my zoo, you know, that wasn't me.
Yeah.
I don't care, don't want to hear about it. But actually, you know, it is selfish. And like, I'm pretty sick of this word selfish being used as a negative word.
Mm-hmm.
Like, being selfish is so important. Like, especially when you have a mental health condition, like, you have to be selfish, because if you're not selfish and you don't put yourself first, it's only a matter of time before everything just falls to bits. So I've really learned to just, you know, well, I'm really sorry you went through that, you know, and I'm really sorry I don't remember, but that's not me.
Yeah.
So,
do you think that was a key point in your life, being able to get to that point where you're like, that is...
well, I came to that point in January 2020, and I've only had one episode since.
Yeah.
So that's not coincidence, you know? And there's so much we don't know about bipolar. Like, we know that if an adult has bipolar, that there's a 10% chance of offspring having bipolar. So there is a genetic link, but there's so much more. I mean, it's to do with dopamine levels in the brain. It's to do with your electrical pathways, and there's quite a lot of theory, and there's some research as well to back up the fact that people with bipolar don't rebuild and manage the neurons in their brain as well as neurotypical people who don't have this condition. And I suppose the understanding is that this causes some sort of miscommunication, and that's where your thoughts get lost, and they start repeating on themselves, and you're not thinking like yourself because these neurons aren't being repaired or demolished, because obviously our brain is like constantly rewiring itself to do things differently. And I know, like, from what I understand, and I'm certainly not a what's the word, educational expert on it, but I know what it feels like, and I get that. Like, I do get that, because it can't just be something, it can't just be, it's everything. There's always something. I mean, serotonin in the brain for depression, they can map schizophrenia and everything, and bipolar is the same. But the difference with bipolar, I mean, it reminds me quite a lot of autism. It's on the same sort of broad spectrum. You can flick between 1 to 4. Like, I'm really having a bit of a difficult time at the moment for completely different types of bipolar. So I'm not manic, I'm not overly energetic, none of that. Like, if I don't know how to explain it, it's like when you get on a roller coaster, the worst part of a roller coaster is that stop just before you go. I feel like for the last kind of 6 or 8 weeks I've been at that stop, and I've just been like, and as much as I'm like, oh, I don't want it to go down because I'm scared, I'm like, oh, I want it to go down, so I'm sick to death of sitting up here, So it's just teetering all the time. So I've just been put on a new tablet to work alongside my current medication to see if it can just like push that down. It's like a pressure cooker.
Yeah. So historically then, would you have then, your next step, would you think then an episode would be coming on?
This has never happened before.
Really?
This has never happened before. So I tend to wake up pretty manic.
Yeah.
So
unaware of it, and then
straight away, like, mismatched clothes, different thoughts, not knowing what day it was, not knowing what I'm supposed to do, not being able to prioritize anything, because literally, like, I mean, it's the most harrowing feeling when the mania starts, because you're still somewhat aware of yourself, you're still there a little bit, but these thoughts are just flying and flying, and I've often felt like really disorientated, where there's just so many things to think about, and I can't catch any of the thoughts. And then I do finally catch one, and I run with it, and it becomes all I can do, and then that's all I can concentrate on, and that's what has to happen, and yeah, it's like it's tiring, but it's getting to that point now where I'm functioning fine, I'm perfectly safe to drive, I'm everything is going great, but just within myself, I know I'm not at baseline, I'm just that little bit above it. So I'm just hoping that this tablet does something.
So what about sort of comorbidity with it? Is there anything that kind of sits alongside it that
Yes.
like a,
Yeah, so I've also got a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, which I don't really understand very well, or certainly not as well as I should do. I'm not sure anyone does, actually. It's a really weird one. It's basically that it's different strands of your personality become stronger and weaker depending on your mood. So for example, and I get that because I can get extremely paternal, and like Jack often says, you left your car in gear, are you all right? And I'm like, what? And actually, like little things like that, like not making a stickler for making the bed. If I don't make the bed, that's normally like a sign, leaving my car in gear. Just having that like irritability, like really quickly I'll just like fly off the handle over something that's completely, irrelevant.
It's stuff that you don't notice.
Stuff that I don't notice. Stuff like, just like for me, like it's the irritability and anxiety. Like I'm really easily triggered by my anxiety. So like things like packing a bag for me, it just triggers memories of childhood, and I find that really difficult. I've actually started working really hard. So up to six weeks ago, I wouldn't open the door. So if you had knocked on that door, get Jack or one of the kids to open the door.
That must cause quite a lot of stressing, because what if you're the only person in?
I just let it. I wouldn't open it.
Yeah.
I would just wait, and I've often been there, and there's been a parcel, and I've watched the red thing come in the letterbox. I'm like, just open the door, just open the door, just open the door. I just can't. Can't pack a bag for love nor money. Like really, those sort of things are really, really triggering, and they're really small. And like people think, what? I can't, now that I'm on the spot, I can't think of all of the other million things, but there are loads.
Does that veer off into sort of like a OCD type kind of like obsession, as in like, if I do this will happen, or does it not sort of?
Yeah, no, I think for me it's very much rooted in memories.
Okay.
So like some really traumatic things from my childhood, like packing a bag, and I went to boarding school as a young child, and that was like a horrific experience. And that, like watching, like packing a bag brings that back. There are certain smells, soya milk, can't smell soya milk, and then like that really clean smell, like that bleach smell, like, things like that. And I find these things really difficult, but recently I've been really working hard to like channel it. So with the exception of cutting chicken, which I still can't do, I don't think I ever can, I'm opening doors. Only when I know who it is. And we're getting a new door next month, which is exciting. Just gonna have one of those little peepholes. And I know it seems really stupid, but it's so easy for one of these tiny things to trigger mania. Really.
So is that one of the things that, the way that you're describing it in my mind is, I imagine it like you're on a bike and someone's holding your shirt, like it's sort of holding you back, like if I open this door, that shirt is going to yank me back into like...
Exactly, another time, another place. And like smell and sight and touch and sound, they're massive. They're massive triggers for all kinds of memories and mental health and difficulties and anxiety. And for me, I'm a very emotive person. Like I'm really emotional. Like I can't watch an advert without crying. Like Jack just thinks for them. So why are you crying? It's not even.
It's just Mr. Muscle.
Yeah, I remember once. I can't remember what we were watching. Some film, and I'd seen the film before, and he'd found it. He'd just about to press play. And he looked over. I was crying. We haven't even pressed play yet. I know how sad it is. So those sort of things, especially with my childhood, I find I immerse myself back in that time. I almost become that child again. Like I can feel that it's 6 o'clock on a Sunday. I can feel that I'm putting my clothes in my bag. I can feel that I'm going to have to go down to the car, be driven back to boarding school. I can.
So you're quite like a visual thinker then, when you see it in your mind. And then I guess then what happens is it's interesting because I'm not sure how to explain it. When I was in CBT therapy when I was younger, I say younger, like a couple of years ago, they we're talking about visual thinking and how your body doesn't know that all those things you've just gone through in your head haven't actually happened. So all that stress that I've put on myself of this traumatic time, my body's like, oh, well, we're exhausted now. And then I'm like, but none of that's happened. So why am I tired? Why am I so anxious? Why am I so stressed out? And then it was only when someone said, because your brain is telling your body, we've just gone through all those horrendous things that you just thought might have happened. And do you think that those things have helped you to empathise with young people that come to live with you, do you think?
Massively. Like, I mean, literally, I remember doing our Form F way back when, with the wonderful Georgina. And I'm just doing it like and talking about things, and I was like, oh my, literally every single thing that I went through, especially with like boarding school and that kind of attachment and difficulties and challenging behaviour and my response to people, and it's so indicative now. I mean, I look at our youngest boy, and I get it on a level, not from a want to try, and I get it on a level that Jack could never get it, because he never went through that kind of trauma or that being separated from family and having to go somewhere you didn't want to go, you know, all of those kind of things. So I really do, I get it, and I think that made connecting with our youngest boy so much easier. And I know that he probably didn't understand at the time, but I knew that he got that I got it, you know? We just...
Like that connect, you just know.
Yeah. And now, I mean, he's, you know, really rooted here, and he'll choose me if I haven't told him off, or he'll choose Jack if he hasn't told him off, or he'll try and pit us against each other and work very hard at that. I was like, if you wouldn't work that hard, it'd be good in the first place.
When you were doing your Form F then, obviously that is like dredging the ocean, isn't it, through everything? And
absolutely.
What was your sort of mania and bipolar like during the Form F assessment time?
Yeah, it was all right. It was something I had to be really careful about. It was something that really had like the potential to trigger. Yeah. And you know, Georgina was amazing. I remember one week we were kind of just naturally getting to that point, and I just thought, I can't do that today. And you know, we just skipped it, we moved on, we spoke about something else. So, you know, it is really triggering, and it's really harrowing actually to kind of, because it's different, like having, like thinking about it. Like if I'm off for a walk, like it might ping into my head and I can dispel that thought and choose not to think about it and carry on. But when you're doing something like Form F, you have to immerse yourself. Like you've got to talk about it, and not only have you got to talk about it, you've got to talk about it in such a way that they understand how it affected you, so that they can keep you safe with pairing and matching with the child, and keeping the child safe, because you don't want to be triggered. And you know, it has to be done. But it was really tough. It was really tough to. And both Jack and I had teary moments during the Form F, because
I think it's tough for everybody. Yeah. And when you're layering in, you know, things like you're saying like bipolar and stuff, I think everybody's got those things that layer on difficulties and challenges, but actually then the risk in your case, isn't it, is that actually that then does then trigger you into, you know, a manic episode.
And the massive, like for me, I mean, I can't actually put into words how terrifying the whole application for fostering was, because I mean, essentially, I've either lied about being bipolar, or I've told the truth and not got jobs, been left out, not been chosen. So it's something that until, you know, becoming a foster carer with Blue Sky, before that, it was something I was really shamed to have. It was something that I wasn't open and honest about. It certainly wasn't something I spoke about. You know, it was that big, massive chip on my shoulder that, you know, there's so much ignorance around bipolar, and that's not, I don't say ignorance in a negative way, I mean it, you know, just really naturally, like people are ignorant. Like I remember when I got my diagnosis, my parents were like, we don't know, we don't understand, I don't know what you mean, how can this be, you know, and not from, you know, my parents both really loving and brilliant people, no way. No, they are, and you know,
but didn't understand it.
No, and they've had to really like upskill themselves and learn about it. You know.
What about in sort of like, you know, if you look at, I don't know, like sort of mainstream media and celebrities or whatever, you know, people are quite open about their mental health challenges, particularly now. But if you were to look across the spectrum, it's like role models or people that you've gone, they've got bipolar and look what they're managing to achieve. Is there anybody sort of...
So for me, like the massive one is Sinead OConnor.
Really?
Yeah. She's got bipolar type 1. And I don't know if you remember, several years ago, she had a horrific break, like an absolutely stinker of a manic episode. One where she left her kids in Dublin and just went to America and stayed in a travel lodge or the equivalent over there for many weeks, maybe months. And at the time I was teaching drama in the drama school in Dublin, and the girl who was teaching singing in the same school, her partner was the nanny, and for Sinead OConnor, and they were just like, we don't know where she is, we don't know what's going on. And it was like it was a really nervous time, and you know, nobody I worked with knew I had bipolar. And I was like, oh my God. Like,
and I guess you didn't hear comments of what people are saying, like,
cut. There was this massive, she's a terrible mother.
Yeah.
She's an awful woman. She's abandoned her kids. She's got no respect for herself. She's got no respect for her fans. She's a role model to loads of people. She's just abandoned her whole family. And I was just sitting back and I was like,
that could be me. Like,
I get it.
Yeah.
I know why, because she's not her.
Yeah.
I know why. And I couldn't voice it. I couldn't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
A room full of like highly educated, highly skilled, really brilliant teachers. And I was just sitting there like, I was like, you're all so wrong. Like, you've no idea what you're talking about. But I couldn't open up about it because then they might know that I had bipolar.
Yeah.
And
then you're opening yourself up to it. Yeah.
Couldn't do it. And there are, Stephen Fry has bipolar.
Really?
Yeah. And speaks really openly and honestly about his relationship with his mania, and how that has, been such a massive difficulty in his life, and how, only now at later life that he's finally managed to realise the benefits of his bipolar, and how actually his bipolar is one of the main attributes as to how he's, managing such huge amount of intelligence, and he's just, I loved him always. I just thought he was amazing.
But now just a little bit more.
But now, even more. I can't remember what the question was now.
No, it was just about sort of people in the public eye that kind of,
Yeah, and do you know what? I remember watching Homeland. I don't know if you ever watched Homeland.
Yeah.
And the main woman in that, the protagonist, she had bipolar. I've never been so angry by a portrayal of it was such a poor portrayal of what mania looks like and what having bipolar does, and
it's such a massive mainstream program as well.
Huge. At one point it was up there with Friends. Like when it first came out, it was massive. I remember there was this scene where she thought she was pulling a gun and shooting someone, but it turned out in reality she just had a stick in her hand or something, and there was no one there. I was like, that doesn't happen. It's hallucinations happen. Really strong. I've had them. My last manic episode, I had a conversation with my grandmother who's dead 15 years. I held her hand. She was as real as anything else in the whole entire world. I heard the colour orange. Actually, you'll see behind you on this wall that's the pen that I could hear when I was in Antelope House in the psychiatric unit, because I hadn't been taken in, but I was in like this treatment room and they were just trying to keep me safe. And apparently, like Jack was telling me that there's like a psychiatrist and a psychologist and a behavioural and this and everyone's there, and we're all sitting around this table, and I've got in with like these books, like notebooks and diaries and pens, and I'm sitting down and going to have this big massive meeting. I have no recollection of this, but then I start hearing something and it's like clang, 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 and I get up and there's like a really high window, and I'm jumping, and I can see that there's this like rope on a pole that obviously had a flag on, but I couldn't see the flag because of the ankle. And this rope was just hitting the thing. And I can remember the sensation. Nothing was more important than my capacity to clap at the exact time that rope hit that pole. So they were all having like this big massive meeting, and I'm sitting in the corner like this. And it's got to laugh really. And then I'm like, I could hear something. I go back over to my book. I put this orange pen up to my ear, and I could hear the colour orange. I could absolutely hear it, and I just thought that I was dreaming or whatever. And like 2 or 3 weeks after the episode, and I was like, Jack, I really could hear the colour orange, like I really could. So I googled it, and apparently it's way more common than you would think.
With people with bipolar?
People with bipolar. Schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder.
And is it a similar sound?
It's like, the only way I could explain it...
Have people described a similar sound when they said they've heard it, or just a sound?
So like one thing like this happened to me before, years ago, when I was living outside of Dublin in a place called Slane in County Meath, and I was walking out to my car. It was a really difficult time. I was just broken up with my ex-fiancée. We were still in the same house, like trying to sort our lives out. And I had this overwhelming sense that the flowers were telling me that everything was going to be okay. And it was really real. And I'm getting into my car and being like, oh, well, the flowers are looking after me, so I'm fine. And that was logical to me because I was manic. Whereas obviously, if you got into a car and you thought the flowers were talking, you'd be like, you know.
But I guess everything, but because there's the way that you are in that moment, that's real. Like, that's all good.
Absolute reality.
Everything's fine, guys. I don't know if you put a seatbelt on. Say flowers have got me.
And apparently, I was just like, you don't know what you're missing. All of you up there in your high horses, all of your degrees and your doctorates, you can't hear any sound, can't hear any colours, can you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh God, it's terrible, awful. But I keep it up there, just as a little memento mori.
Do you think that stuff like that then turns what could be something that I'm sure at times is crippling, but also turns it into a positive when you're not in a manic? Do you know what I mean? So like you said, like you've already said you wouldn't change it for the world. You wouldn't get rid of it.
No.
And actually, by having that there as that reminder, it probably allows you to then compartmentalise those moments in your life probably more positive.
It's a really tough one, because I know that when I say things like I wouldn't change it, I mean, he doesn't even have to say anything, but I know that really irritates Jack. And I know it probably irritates my brother, and it irritates my family and my close friends, because they think, well, why wouldn't you? Like, you might not remember, but we remember what you put us through.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard. I mean, I have said the most grotesque and harrowing things to Jack and family and friends that I can't even. That I didn't even know I had. I've never thought that way. I've never, you know. And I hear these things afterwards in retrospect, and I'm hanging on to the whole. No, I'm really strong and I'm really determined, and I'm not going to blame myself because that wasn't me. And on the other hand, I'm going, oh my God, like I reduced my husband to tears. I've, made his life really difficult. He's not been able to go to work all week. He's had to babysit me. He's had to look after the kids. He's had to sort this out, and to that meeting and this meeting, and all this stress on people. And I've got the audacity to say I wouldn't change it for the world. And then I think, oh my God, actually, maybe I would change it for the world. And then the mania just starts again. And you're like, No, but it's really hard because it's my bipolar, and I can only say my, because I know loads of people with bipolar from like Bipolar UK and stuff that suffer the same as me with memory loss. But it's all well and good me saying, oh well, it wasn't me. I'm fine. I don't remember. But there's been behind that truth. There've been 7 days of abuse. There've been 7 days of, and even if it wasn't abusive, but 7 days of watching me. Where am I going? Where's his phone? Where are the car keys? Where's his wallet? What has he bought? What has he spent? What's he booked online? Where is he going? What flights has he done? Like, I've done it all. I've ended up in Rome before, manic, in a 5-star hotel, like £600 a night hotel. Not recently, but back when I had £600 to spend on a hotel room. But yeah, it's really difficult to kind of keep that scale of, I can't even empathise with the people I love because I wasn't there.
Yeah. But
I was the person that did it, and I'm also removing myself from any blame by saying it wasn't me. And then, it's blame there's a claim. Do you know? And my friends and family probably think, well, but it was you. Like, you must take ownership of this.
So we've spoken about your bipolar type 1.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit more then, and everybody else, a little bit more about type 2? So a minute ago you said that obviously that is slower, lethargic.
Yeah. Mental Health UK, which I have in front of me here, they break it down quite. Actually, no, I don't personally like it as much as some of the other websites that I should have printed off, but they kind of put time frames on it. So if you've had such and such for 1 or 2 weeks, then it's this type, and then it's that type. And I just think it's a little bit too stringent, because it's such a fluid health problem. But for the most part, how I remember it is type 1, really high manic, not very low depression, and then back to kind of stable, and then going back up. And then type 2 is the opposite, so not so much mania, down into depression, and then coming back to normal. And then you've got cyclothmic, which basically means it's like before bipolar disorder. It's a type of bipolar, but it's much more milder. It's much more manageable. It's like small bits of depression and mania that are just sitting outside of what you would consider neurotypical. But they're probably more likely to be able to work and hold down a job and keep the family, and you do all of those sorts of things. Just like a milder form of bipolar disorder. And then you've got mixed bipolar state, which I've always found fascinating. So it's basically having the depression at the same time as the mania. So it's like having a massive amount of energy, but being so depressed you can't do anything with it.
Oh, that must be really like, it's like a bottle with a lid on it, just being shaken and shaken and shaken.
Exactly. And I think it's the one that we know least about. It's, it's really difficult because it's kind of the antithesis to other forms of mania, because eventually that will burst.
Yeah.
So then you slip into one or two or a rapid cycle or whatever it might be.
I'd imagine that's one that's quite isolating as well, because you can't put your finger on it.
Yeah. I mean, it must just be awful. It's to have like, oh my God, I've got to do so much, but I'm so depressed that I can't move. Like, it must just be, awful. It's almost like I think of a wolf that stood in a bear trap.
Yeah.
Just wanting to get out, but they can't move. And then you've got rapid cycle, which is literally where you go depressive, manic, depressive, manic, depressive, manic. And, they say any more than 4 in a year, but I mean, I know people who have it on a daily basis, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And again, it's less extreme than like type 1. So essentially type 1 is, this is really, really loose now, because there are always exceptions and people in different categories. Yeah. But if you were to go by Mental Health UK, basically type 1 is the more severe, then it's type 2, then it's type 3, and it's type 4, and then you've got cyclopic as well, and you've got rapid cycle bipolar. But none of that actually means anything, because each person's journey is so individual, and but they're just like, there's so many videos, like great videos, 5-minute videos on YouTube that you can grab, and it just goes through them like really quickly.
And I think that's what part of this is about. So if you guys look underneath this video, you see links to the website websites that Dom was talking about, to be able to, because I think then that allows people to explore those things.
And bipolar.uk as well is brilliant. And it's not just brilliant for information, it's really good for support. So they've got different support groups, they've got phoning service, they've got counselling services, they can represent you if you're having like real bad time of mania. They do a lot of work with psychiatrists and psychiatric venues. They're amazing. They do loads.
What about bipolar in kids then? Is there much knowledge of that, or is it something that tends to get picked up? Is it misdiagnosed, do you think, as a child?
I think we're on the turn in that. I think that it's a really, really tough time to diagnose anything, isn't it? Because you've got puberty and you've got all of this heightened energy anyway as a natural child, and looking back now, like both my parents would say, it was so obvious that you had bipolar at the time, but we didn't know what it was. We didn't know, and I think we have a much broader capacity for diagnosing bipolar earlier. It would be great if the government decided to give more money to CAMS so they could do their job properly. That'd be awesome.
We'll fast track this.
If you're conservative, turn off now. They're doing amazing work, but they're so understaffed and they're so underfunded. And I know our youngest boy, we were really lucky. We only waited like 6 months. I've got friends who 3 years later are still waiting for ADHD diagnosis. And bipolar again is a really difficult one, because in children it often displays like ADHD and attention deficit disorder. Like it's really hard. Like if you imagine, so you've got, especially like vulnerable children in care and foster children, you've got your circle and everything in here is to do with attachment, and you have another circle over here and it's ADHD. And if you look at everything that's in one circle and the other, there's normally about 70 to 80% crossover. So 70% of what's just attachment is also indicative for people with ADHD. So that's why it's really difficult to diagnose ADHD in children, especially children who have come from a broken household or been taken into care. And if you put bipolar type 1 or type 2 over that, depression is a sign of all of these things. Hyperactive is ADHD, hyperactive is attachment, not making connections is all 3. There's so much crossover, so it's really difficult. And that's why it is so important that, charities like bipolar.co.uk, mentalhealth.co.uk and CAMS get the money that they need, because there is, like, I can just tell you now, if I had been diagnosed before puberty or in and around puberty with bipolar, so much trauma and difficulty could have been avoided completely and utterly. And it's a real shame. And what's really sad is it's happening every day in the UK. kids and teenagers are being misdiagnosed, misunderstood, because there's just not the money to invest in a proper diagnosis tool. Kids are coming in, and by the time they actually get their referral, they're already a teenager, and we're completely, like, they're on chapter 10 and we're on chapter 1.
Yeah.
And there's just so much more work that needs to be done on it for helping people get diagnosed. And a lot of people find diagnosis really difficult, and I don't want my child to have this stigma, I don't want my person to have this, I don't want to know this, I don't want to know that. For me, it was the most freeing thing. I remember getting diagnosed with bipolar and just thinking, I make sense.
Yeah.
Everything about me now makes sense.
It helps you find your place.
I get it.
And where you fit.
Yeah, I get myself now. I understand. That's why this happened.
And I guess opens the doors to other people as well. So you're like, actually, I have got bipolar, I do have bipolar. And actually now these connections, because you've mentioned quite a lot, knowing loads of the people that have got bipolar. I guess that's come through being able to access charities and different organisations that have tried to link up people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really, I consider myself extremely lucky. Like, this, again, a sweeping statement, but this is only from what I've seen in the people that I've made friends with and people that I know. There's a massive amount of people with bipolar who are homeless, drug addictions, gambling addictions, drink addictions. It's the mental health condition that lends itself beautifully to addiction.
Yeah.
Because just naturally, when you're manic, your capacity for managing danger and risky behaviour is completely diminished. There is no consequence. I don't understand consequence when I'm manic.
Yeah.
I'm invincible. I can do everything, and I can do it better than everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm,
there's no comeuppance.
There's no
nothing.
comeuppance.
Yeah.
I can spend what I like, I can buy what I like, I can gamble if I want to, I can buy drink, I can buy drugs. I've never bought drugs. But I could if I wanted to, and that's the difficulty.
Yeah.
So then these sort of risky behaviours are constantly being engaged with when manic, but then the mania goes and you're just left with an addiction.
Yeah.
So, it's massive.
And the debt, if it's gambling or something like
constant.
that. Yeah.
It's just constant, absolutely constant. And that is why I always say to anyone I know, and there is so many people out there who say, I'm not taking medication. I'm not taking it because I don't want to be dulled down. I don't want to be muted. I don't want my artistic creativity to be censored. I want to be who I am, and this is who I'm meant to be. You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong, in my opinion. You're absolutely wrong, because who you're meant to be is a neurotypical person. You're meant, yes, you've got bipolar, yes, it's great that you embrace it, yes, it's great that it gives you this creative flair, but you do not have to be manic to have those things.
Yeah.
I'm evidence, it doesn't go away if you take medication. All that goes away, all that happens is you sleep really well and you don't get manic as often.
Yeah.
Anyone who's watching this who knows somebody with bipolar who's not taking medication, really, don't annoy them because they're not that mess. But just be aware that, medication it's the foundation of my healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
Absolute foundation. And that's really difficult because I think those things when I'm manic. And that's what often encourages my mania. I'm like, no, I'm not taking tablets. I'm invincible.
Because of invincibility,
I'm manic. I'm on top of the world. And people think, oh my God, it must be so hard. Why would you think it's hard? How could you possibly think it's hard to feel invincible, above everybody, and often with superhuman powers and the capacity to manage everything on the planet? You're just elated continuously. That's not what you should feel sorry for us about. Feel sorry for us because we've got to come down from it. That's the hardest thing. And I've often found myself at the end of a manic episode trying to trigger another manic episode or behaving in a risky way that might trigger mania because I don't want it to go.
That's like an addictive thing, isn't it? It's when it's addictive, one more drink, one more bet, one more drop of drugs, whatever, one more. And actually, like you say, you're addicted to the mania.
Absolutely, and it's an addictive situation. You are literally, it is a feeling that I've never felt from any. It's just the most amazing feeling in the world. It really is. It's pure, unadulterated excitement and happiness and power and beauty, and everything is wonderful. But of course,
it ends.
It ends. Yeah. Feel sorry for us because it ends, not because we feel it.
So let's talk about medication.
Yeah. So it's a nightmare. It's a maze at the beginning. You've got your antipsychotics, you've got your antidepressants, you've got your mood stabilizers, you've got depot injections, you've got all sorts of different treatments and strengths and tablets that do different things and that thing, and it's trying to find the right balance. Every single person is different. Everyone's relationship with medication is different. I've been on risperidone, olanzapine, tegretol, carbamazepine, sodium valproate, quetiapine, lithium, benzodiazepines like clonazepam, lorazepam, temazepam, diazepam, all of those.
I guess within some of those themselves have got addictive elements,
oh my God,
haven't they?
clonazepam is such, I'm really lucky I don't get it, but a lot of people, it's like the one that people really get addicted to. But yeah, I just want to, I know how many people go through this stage of fighting and trying to find the right medication and just give up. I'm too sedated, I'm sleeping for 14 hours, this is wrong, I can't feel this, my sex drive's gone, this is gone, I have no energy. It's a really rough road, and it's taken 5 years for me to find the right balance. So now I take Priadel, which is lithium, and I take quetiapine, and I've just started a new tablet called haloperidol. And that's just like haloperidol. So it's just a short-term medication, as I was saying earlier.
Roller coaster.
So it's just trying to bring that back down. But yeah, it is such, and please, anyone who's in the life of somebody who's got bipolar and they're struggling with medication, please just be really patient, because it's horrible. I remember when I started on 50 milligrams of quetiapine and I slept 17 hours. Now I'm on 800 milligrams of quetiapine and I just sleep 9 hours. So, you build up a resistance, and it's a really slow process, and it's really draining mentally and emotionally and physically, both for the person, trying to find their right level, but also for the people around them. So I just can't tell you how important it is to just bear with people. It is really hard. It's soul destroying. You're giving into the fact that you need medication, which is often very difficult, then you're taking the medication, it's making you feel worse, and then you have a doctor telling you just keep with it for a couple of weeks, and you can't keep with it, so they put you on something else, and it's really difficult. It's really, really tough. So just have lots of love and compassion and patience for someone who's going on or changing medication.
Cool. So thank you so much, Dom, for giving up time for talking about not just bipolar but yourself as well. I think you've gone into a lot of detail, and I think that's what hopefully people have found interesting. Well, I'll say hopefully, I'm sure they've got done about the real-term effects of living with bipolar. But actually, there's something that you said long before we met, and you said how you turned your disability into your ability, and actually how it has allowed you to do the things that you've done. And
and a lot of that is down to the fostering process. It's down to Blue Sky. It's down to the 4MF. It's down to the whole process. As I mentioned, bipolar has always been a slammed door in my face. Literally all my life, it's just closed doors. And this is the first time where it's opened them. It's the first time where, they're like, yeah, no, that's fine. And I'm like, you sure?
Yeah.
They're like, no, it's, it's fine. It's, if you get manic, it's like breaking a leg. I remember Bridget saying, when I was my first manic episode as a foster carer, I was like, this is it, I can take the kids, this is awful. Actually, but it's just like breaking a leg.
Yeah.
It's...
You wouldn't say wake up hospital.
No,
that's it.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, just chill out. All right.
Yeah.
So, it is down to that, and it has certainly opened up my mind and my openness to speak about it, because, if you can be trusted to do something, it's difficult, and it's, what's the nice way of saying it? No, but it's a really difficult.
Well, you're being trusted with the most important thing to somebody.
Yeah.
And that's their child.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't get much bigger than that.
No. So it's it's good. And what was really lovely was when we got married in February, our youngest boy's grandparents, granddad came to the wedding as well, kind of to keep an eye on him and everything. And my brother got up to make a speech, and a lot of his speech was about mental health and bipolar and how far I've come and everything. And I was like, oh my God, I was just sitting at the top table. I went, oh, his granddad's here.
Yeah.
And I was on that instant, and he came up afterwards, and the granddad, a couple of hours later, he was like, it's so interesting to hear that and how far you've come. And he was the first person when I was manic, Jack rang him. He was like, say no more. I don't want to hear another word. I'm in the car. I'll be there in an hour. And he came straight down, got our youngest boy, and looked after him for a couple of days while I got better. So I've been very lucky.
Thank you so much for giving up your time again. And if anybody's got any questions, underneath the video, you'll see all the links that Dom's talked about. Do whatever you need to. And thanks ever so much, mate. I really appreciate it.
No problem.